Well, come on in. Come on. I'm glad you're here. Don't be scared. And yes, you are in the principal's office. We've got 30 minutes to get to the bottom of the issue. And the issue is always education and topics in education that affect our Black children. Differently than most, and our discussion will always be honest and it will always be solution focused. This is where our guests come to explain themselves and their ways around issues in education that affect all of us. So come on in, take a seat. I'm Michelle Penix, or Principal Penix to most, and on today's show, we'll examine virtual learning and the Black community. Let's start with a timeline of how we got here. From the timeline, you remember, and most of you experienced this, that it was March 16th, 2020, when students were first dismissed for class. It was a little less than a month later when NTI, non-traditional instruction, first took place, and the five W's and how were asked. Who, what, when, where, why, and how was this going to work for our students? They spent the next 2 months trying to figure it out, sometimes large amounts of participation, sometimes not so much. And it took us all the way to the last day of school, where there wasn't really an end to the school year, but preparations began immediately for a safe reopening of school. The month of June was pretty much consumed with that, and we come into July, and unfortunately, COVID numbers began to soar again. Fast forward, in the middle of July, we have, and here in the state of Kentucky and in Louisville, Dr. Polio announcing that NTI 2.0 would be how we would be going to school. Trump, during this time, demanded that schools reopen, and districts demanded more money from the state, and unions began to pressure schools if they did reopen by making sure that they did so in a safe way before teachers actually came back. Our graphic shows us that in August 25th, 2020, when we started on the first day of school, that was really just the beginning. And when we come back from this break, we'll be joined by our guests, parents who have a lot to say about virtual learning. So don't go away. You are at the principal's office. Welcome back to the principal's office. I'm your host, Michelle Penix, and I am joined by our wonderful guests this afternoon as we continue to examine topics around virtual learning and the Black community. I am pleased to welcome two of our guests to the show. Our first is Miss Denisha Rivers. And Denisha Rivers, many of you may know as the founder of Visions of Life Outreach Ministry. She is politically active in our community, and she has a great passion for the homeless and for families in our community and helping them get back on their feet. So we welcome Denisha to our show today.
Thank you.
We are also joined by the one and only Miss Carla Robinson, and Carla Robinson is an enrollment specialist with OVEC, Early Childhood. And so both are mothers of 3 children each. So they have a lot to talk about when we talk about virtual learning. So welcome, Carla, to the show.
Thank you.
All right, so let's jump right in. We've got a couple of questions. And so when you talk about virtual learning and the Black community, there are so many issues that are unique to the Black community. And we know that for many of us, the Black community and poverty sometimes go hand in hand, not all. So these questions may not be related to you specifically, but I'd like you to speak to how, if they do, and maybe even family members where you've had these conversations. So when you talk about virtual learning, we talk about Black families have a larger percent of students that are ECE and special needs classes. There may be affected by job loss or income loss during this time of COVID. Sometimes they work during the day and are not able to get off to supervise their children. Of course, high levels of stress in the home or crowded conditions, maybe even in the home. Limited access to technology and connectivity, those are all issues associated a lot of times with the Black community. And so how do these issues affect your family and or family members that you may know and their ability to fully participate in virtual learning? And we'll start with you, Denisha.
Well, I will say, as a mother of 3, I'm already dealing with a stressful schedule. You know, I have an older son that because of COVID, he had to leave WKU. So that was a whole nother total issue that I had to deal with, is with a college student that actually wants to stay on campus. Now he's coming back home. So I had to deal with that. Also, at the last minute, I'm also dealing with now mom has to go on unemployment. So my finances are changing. I have a 13-year-old and I also have a 6-year-old. So now I'm dealing with, oh my goodness, trying to juggle, because I'm very busy. Like you said, I'm very active in the community as well. So I'm very busy. And also now I'm dealing with, thank goodness, my 13-year-old, he's able to, he has he can actually, you know, he's independent. Right. So he can do a lot of things on his own. But now here I am, I have a 6-year-old that's not. And then he was already in classes such as speech and some other things that he needed help with. So it was very stressful for me, you know, and I think with that being said, this year alone, I can compare from last year, it's better. It was, I think it was just unexpected. And it just seemed like it was just rush and what are we gonna do now? So, you know.
So what did you do? Because it sounds like the getting out of the routine, getting out of the schedule and the stress that came. What did you do, like you feel this time, to be better prepared, since you couldn't be at all last time?
Well, this time it was planned. You know, the unexpected, it was very unexpected. So this time it was planned, and I was able to prepare. Okay. You know, that was the difference. Like I said, I was focused on getting things scheduled for my younger son that's in elementary school and getting his agenda. And actually I had the time to check out the resources, and as a parent, you know, who I need to reach out to, who I need to email, and how. So a lot of the resources and the tools were out there for me now. So I was prepared this time, and last time I was not prepared. So.
Well, you brought up an important point, because we know communication is key. So when we talk about solutions, over communicating with your child's school about what you can do to make sure they plan appropriately sounds like a good idea for most families as they go through this. Carla, how have those issues affected you or family members?
I think for us, I was normally the busy one. So I always kind of stayed busy. I was always kind of out of sight of the home. And then COVID hit, and I was at home every single day. So mentally for myself, I had to adjust for that. I had to adjust that I did not have work to do. I did not have emails to check. I didn't have a place to go. I couldn't go anywhere. And so mentally for myself, I had to figure out ways to get myself back into a motion where I can be effective as a mom, and also now as a teacher for my children. And I have 3 different age kids. They're all 2 to 3 years apart. And so it was difficult that first time around, trying to adjust for a pre-K baby versus a 5th grader who was having to do her defense. Now I will say it is better because we knew that it was going to happen, but in some instances, I felt like there could have been more planning. It could have been set up a little bit better so that those first day glitches wouldn't have happened. If somebody had thought about, you know, all these things that could have maybe happened, maybe we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in on this Monday. And then all 3 of my children are ECE students who all receive resources, and it's difficult. We're not getting the same resources that we normally would have if they were in school. And it's not to blame the resource teachers. I know that they are trying their best to be as effective as they possibly can, but doing it not face to face, doing it through a computer screen when you have a 5-year-old who doesn't even want to be in front of a computer because he doesn't understand why he has to do this, and why can't he just be inside the classroom, and how is he at school when he's really at home, you know. So it's been very difficult for me to make sure that you know, all of those things that I have requested and have been given is really happening. And so for me, I'm really nervous if this happens the whole year, because what are we going to do? How am I going to make sure that my children aren't held back any further? How do I make sure that my children are receiving the best education that they possibly can have, even though I can't be inside of a school building?
Right, and you spoke so well, both of you did, around the issue that I want to reiterate and ask for our audience to advocate. By the time this show tapes, one of the things will happen, we will have been several weeks into it, and one of the things that happened just recently in Kentucky was that our education commissioner allowed for schools to take 15% of their students back into the school for targeted assistance. And one of the things that we're really advocating for is that those be our ECE students on a rotating basis. We think that it's a good idea that Jefferson County, has a high percentage of ECE students, maybe as high as 15 or 20%. So if those school students were invited back into the building on some sort of rotating basis with their parents, we think that could be a big assistance to those families. I see both of you nodding your head at some point.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for those answers. Okay, so then the next topic is, how do you feel, or what are your expectations around grading? Do you expect that you'll see the same ABC, OS, NIU? Do you want to see it in terms of feedback? What are your thoughts about grading?
I would really love it to not be an ABCD, because for me, I do not want my child to be deemed, because mama just can't figure it out. There are just some things that I'm starting to learn how to use. There are things that we're both trying to figure out, and to be given a grade and to possibly be given an F or a U based off of the effort that we're trying to put in forth, I think would be a disservice. What I would love to see is a lot of feedback. Just them talking with my child, seeing how far that they've come. A lot of my teachers have done one-on-one classes each week via the Google Meets. Just talking to my child and saying, okay, so the book that we read, how did you like it? Asking those type of questions. Whereas when I had the paperwork that I had to fill out, and we were talking about, what was the beginning, what was the body, what was the end, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what information they really want, making them go all broad.
So it felt like you were in school again.
Yes.
It felt like that,
and,
right?
And I don't want it to also be taken off that, mom is helping. I mean, mama has a master's degree, so I don't want them to have to use words and things that is not normally their language. And so I think that giving everybody some ease would be better if we did more feedback, less grading, and just making sure that the kids have what they need versus making them feel inadequate, especially those families that parents may not have a high school diploma. I couldn't imagine doing this and having like a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old and be trying to get them through if I don't even know it and can't even assist them with it. So I think that would be the best.
Okay, so feedback. What about you, Denisha?
I think grading should be fair and it should be flexible, because one thing about it, the teachers have to understand we're not living in a normal time, and things at home are not normal. So I'm with Carla on that. I think it should be a fair system. It shouldn't be an A, B, C, D, E, F.
Right.
It should actually be a participation grade. Are they checking in? What are they doing? And also, if there's counselors or someone that can also call and see, hey, how's the family doing? How is your children doing? Is there anything because they got to understand that we're living in some rough times, and our children are dealing with a whole lot. They're seeing a lot, they know a lot, so that affects the learning. Right. So this A, B, and C, and dinging and all this, no, that has to go.
So you prefer the feedback as well?
Yes.
In terms of how the students are progressing. So that's one of the common themes that both of you have shared. But it also lends itself to better communication between you and the school as well, because it requires it. In previous times when the kids went to school, so many parents just said, you're at school, that's what you do, but now you're at home, so let's keep the lines of communication open. Excellent. Okay, so now that we see that, talk to me, and Denisha, you kind of spoke to the times that we're in. So talk to me a little bit about mental health support, social emotional support, and learning. Is that an expectation you have right now for teachers in virtual learning, or for schools, not necessarily on the teacher, but mental health therapists at the school? Do you expect that they'll provide services to your child, to all children? What are your expectations around that?
Yes, and they should.
Okay.
They should. This is something that I am very passionate about and very concerned about, that I'm fighting for myself, not only in my household, but actually I'm very active on the front lines right now. Is because, like I've always said, that mental health and stress, when you take a child out of a normal situation, that they're in school every day with their friends, they're able to communicate, they're able to see their teachers, they're able to be active in sports, and now you're going to take that away. You have COVID on top of it, and what I call is a black pandemic. Black pandemic is you're dealing with COVID, but now our children are dealing with the social issues that are going on, from racism, everything that they're seeing on TV as far as police brutality, the killings on the streets.
Yeah.
You got to remember, like, a lot of our children, if they're in middle school, these recent tragedies we've had, 14, 15-year-olds that are getting killed in the street. So yes, mental health has to be there. They have to do better. They have to bring in specialists. Also, whatever that comfort zone is, they need to help that the child as an encouragement and support. So yes, you can't leave that out. You can't. That affects the learning.
Carla?
I definitely have always been advocating for more mental health opportunities within the schools. I mean, within my family alone, I lost my brother just 2 years ago to murder. His case has still been unsolved. And so my children had to go through that. They remember that moment. They know what that moment seems like. We also live in the West End. There's just a few days ago we heard gunshots. And my kids were like, Hope, is that gunshots or is that firecrackers? So they're dealing with that. I do feel like JCPS in some ways kind of failed my children 2 years ago, because they did not make sure that, even though it was an uncle that they lost and he wasn't 14 or he wasn't 19, it was still affecting them. And nobody really took a time to really ask them, how did that affect you? How is Breonna Taylor's situation affecting them? My children has went to march. They've made posters. So my daughter knows who Breonna Taylor is, and she understands that she's no longer here and that that's unfair. She also understands who Donald Trump is and who President Trump is. She also understands that not everything has been great. And so I think giving them the opportunities, giving them the resources, being able to not wait for somebody to call, but to call. I think JCPS is very reactive. They wait for things to happen to make something happen, instead of doing something, like knowing this is happening in our schools. These are happening with our 100,000 kids. Let's do something to make sure that they're being taken care of. It's just so important. And that's one thing I would urge ACPS to continue to do, is to think what's going on and start being, proactive. Start really taking some time and really assessing what's really happening and what our kids need, so that they can be successful, not just in the classroom, but as in life.
And one of the things that you all spoke to when you talk about mental health is making sure that the schools participate with you in making sure that those kids receive services. But we also advocate that should be a part of the curriculum. Right now, and especially when they go back, before the show started and we had a chance to talk, we talked about a daycare here in the city whose biggest complaint was that the kids were just missing mom. They had been home with mom for 6 months, and this is the first time in their life they had not been with them and then have to leave again. So there's a lot of things that kids are really having to deal with. And I think you're both right that mental health opportunities for growth and for reflection during this time and counseling are absolutely necessary. All right, so when we talk about the schedule and routine, that's one of the things that you all mentioned with the first question. Tell me, what would an optimal schedule look like for you? Okay, so we're in dream world for a second. And NTI could look any way as possible. Now, let me give you a couple parameters, because one of the things that we know is that for elementary age students, 1 to 2 hours a day is really considered maximum for kids to be on the computer. And then when you go to middle and high school, maybe up to 4 hours a day would be maximum. So considering that, what would be an optimal solution? What would a schedule look like for you, Denisha, with your family right now?
Well, I would say with my youngest one, he's in 2nd grade, and you want him to be on the Chromebook for at least 2 hours a day. That's not going to happen.
Tell
Because
us
we're
little bit
in a
more.
home, we're in a setting at home where, you know, there may be some distractions or, you know, not only that, okay, he's worried about, okay, am I done yet? Am I done? Am I done? And then he's ready to play his game or ready to watch cartoons or, you know, his focus is, am I done? Am I done? So when I'm saying, okay, you're done, and then I say, well, you got another hour to go. You know, he frowns up. So it's not
Right.
fun to him. I could say that was, you know, I could say this year, talking to his teacher, me and her kind of seeing eye to eye on things, and she's saying other parents are kind of, you know, they have that concern and they have those complaints. You know, she has some nurses that are working 12-hour shifts. You know, and she has some single mothers that can't do that. You know, they're working, they're already trying to do what they can. So I can say personally myself, his teacher, she has a flexible schedule as long as he's checking in, as long as he's doing his work. You can turn his work in by Sunday. So she's open to that. And so now she's like, okay, well, you know, when they have the live where you go on live and you can interact with other students, and teachers said, well, we have, you know, we can record, we're recording now. So the flexibility I can say for myself and my household is, so like I say, I live a, you know, we're busy and I'm busy with the three and I'm trying to make ends meet and I'm trying to, you know, do the things I do for my nonprofit. So, you know.
So just that flexibility
The
and allowing
flexibility.
some communication between
Right.
you and the teacher. Okay.
Right.
What would it look like for you?
I would say just had it for 2 days. And the other 3 days, it was just at home learning where I can just focus on them at whatever time I decide. It does not have to be 9 a.m. or 7 a.m. It can be any time that I decide that I want to work with them. Because my son is the exact same way. He's a kindergartner. He also gets very distracted. They talk about the red trucks. He grabs 15 red trucks. He wants to bring them into the screen. It is not a lot of fun for the teacher. It's not a lot of fun for me because I have to clean it all up. And so if they just did the live classes, really 2 days a week, and even if it was 2 hours, that's, you know, 4 hours total for the week. My middle schooler, however, she has done very well with getting on class every single day, but their classes are 30 minutes. So they're very short. And they're very, very effective. I have to say, Grace James Academy, they have figured it out. They took the time to think, what is the most effective way of teaching kids and getting the most out of the shortest amount of time? And 30 minutes has been great. It gives her a chance to kind of be able to see the other kids. Her teacher gets to interact. And then they have an hour and a half that they can go and do their work on their own at their own time. We love it. But my kindergartner, my third grade, we're struggling because it's every single day and it's for an hour and they want to sleep. Or I've caught my third grader with the computer open, camera off, mic off. She's asleep. So it's hard. But when you have that going on, all of their classes are literally 30 minutes apart, and some of them are at the same time. I can't keep my eye on each one.
Right.
And so that would be my dream if we could have it. But also if they could have a day where they went into school. Just one day where they could go into school would be great for me. If nothing else, just having that day as a day for them to be able to see each other, and just be inside the space of school. Because my kindergartner, when he gets there, he's going to have no clue.
Well, you brought up that point, and I think you kind of mentioned it too with your son, that not really understanding what virtual is, especially if you've got a first timer in school to say, oh, it's time for you to go to school. Wait a minute, what? I'm here at the house? How is this school? So really thinking about how they're affected by all of that. Well, as always, you've been the best. You've been exactly what I hope you would be, as you've shared with us. I'm Michelle Penix, or Principal Penix to most, and that's a wrap for today. It has been a productive hour where we've been able to talk about virtual learning, and this is only part 1. So stay around, same time, same place next week as we continue to talk about virtual learning in the Black community, but this time we'll do it with some young people. So be sure to tune back in. I'm Michelle Penix, and as always, to God be the glory.